There is a moment in every civilization's history when they look up at the stars and ask the same question. Are we alone? The Keth Dominion asked it 40,000 years ago, standing in the shallow marshes of their home world, Vel Narath, watching two moons rise simultaneously over a purple horizon. The Suri Collective asked it 60,000 years before that, their bioluminescent skin flickering with nervous excitement as their first crude telescopes pointed skyward. Even the ancient, incomprehensible Avari asked it, though they asked it so long ago that the stars they were looking at no longer exist. Every civilization asks the question. Most of them eventually get an answer. The answer, as it turns out, is no. You are not alone. You were never alone. The galaxy is absolutely, spectacularly, almost offensively crowded. There are 714 known sapient species registered with the Galactic Accord as of the last census, and 40-something more in various stages of evaluation. Space, for all its theatrical vastness, is less of an empty void and more of a very badly organized apartment block where nobody ever agrees on the temperature. But here is the thing about first contact. The moment you find a new civilization, the moment you reach down and tap on their little planetary window and say, "Hello, yes, we exist, surprise," you change everything. For them, obviously, their whole cosmological understanding detonates like a fuel cell in a magnetic storm. Their religions, their philosophies, their entire concept of identity, gone. Rebuilt from nothing. It takes generations. What nobody talks about, what the Accord's official contact protocols politely skip over in their 47-page procedural documents, is what it does to you. The species making contact. Because sometimes, just sometimes, you tap on that window, and something taps back. Hard. Seventh Contact Assessor Prin Ovalith had been doing this job for 19 years, and she had never once been surprised. She said that out loud, actually, to her junior assessor, a young Suri named Belloc, approximately 4 hours before everything went comprehensively wrong. 19 years, she told him, not looking up from her data lattice, her three-fingered hands tracing contact probability curves with the casual boredom of someone sorting old correspondence. 41 first contacts, not one surprise. Belloc's bioluminescence flickered pale yellow, which among the Suri indicated polite skepticism. Not one? The Drivati seemed surprising at first, Prin admitted. Methane breathers who communicated through subsonic bowel contractions. But once you understand the biology, the communication pattern is completely predictable. She paused. Unpleasant but predictable. The survey vessel Unbroken Inference hung in the dark at approximately 2 light minutes from a small, remarkably unremarkable star in the Orion Spur. Third planet out. Nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere. Liquid water. Carbon-based biology. The automated probes had been watching it for 11 months, feeding back data so comprehensively ordinary that 3 different analysts had flagged the file for low-priority processing. The planet's dominant species was bipedal, bilaterally symmetrical, warm-blooded. They had developed radio technology approximately 120 of their years prior, which put them firmly in the pre-contact window, the zone where civilizations were aware enough to notice visitors, but not yet equipped to handle the full diplomatic weight of Accord membership. Standard protocol was simple. Observe, assess threat and stability indices. File a recommendation, return in 50 years, and check if they'd managed not to destroy themselves in the interim. Most species in this developmental window didn't make it 50 years without at least one major catastrophic event, so the odds were already unfavorable. Prin had filed the preliminary assessment herself. Species designation pending. Recommended classification. Pre-emergent standard observation protocol. Estimated contact eligibility. 40 to 70 years pending socio-political stability resolution. Very professional, very thorough. She had used the phrase socio-political stability resolution as a polite way of noting that these particular bipeds appeared to be running multiple simultaneous large-scale conflicts across their single inhabited continent cluster, and perhaps someone should wait until they sorted that out before introducing the concept of interstellar civilization. It was the probe malfunction that changed everything. Probe 7, designated for polar atmospheric monitoring, developed a positional error in its stealth field generator, sometime in the early morning hours of what the planet's northern hemisphere was calling a Tuesday. The error was small, a 0.003% variance in light refraction suppression, effectively invisible under almost any circumstances, except that directly below Probe 7, at that precise moment, a human named Cassia Wren was sitting on the roof of a research station at the northern pole, eating a meal she described in her personal log as the saddest sandwich in human history, and staring at the sky with a spectrographic imager she had been using to catalog atmospheric particulate. Cassia Wren was, by any reasonable metric, an unremarkable person. 34 years old, mid-level atmospheric researcher. She had 2 published papers, one minor academic dispute with a colleague named Dr. Ferris Okafor about methane stratification models, and a noted enthusiasm for terrible sandwiches. She was not a hero. She was not a visionary. She was a person sitting on a roof at 2 in the morning because the station's internal heating system had stopped working, and paradoxically, the roof was warmer. She looked at the anomaly in her imager for a long time. Then she took 11 photographs. Then she went inside and sent an encrypted data packet to Dr. Okafor, her professional nemesis, because he was the only person she knew who was awake at 2 in the morning and also capable of telling her whether she was looking at an instrumentation artifact or something else. Okafor called her back in 6 minutes, which was a record for a man who had once taken 3 weeks to respond to a peer review request. "Cassia," he said, and his voice had a quality she had never heard from him before, something stripped of the usual competitive edge, something that sounded inexplicably like awe. "Where did you get this?" "Roof," she said. "The roof. The roof of this building. With the spectrograph." There was a silence that lasted approximately 8 seconds, which does not sound like a long time unless you are the person sitting in it. "We need to call someone," Okafor said. "Who do you call?" Cassia said slowly. "For something like this." Another silence. "I have no idea," Okafor said. "But we should figure it out quickly." On the unbroken inference, the alert came through at the same moment Prin was finishing her 3rd cup of something the ship's synthesizer optimistically called herbal tea, and which tasted primarily of disappointment. The probe's error had been detected by the ship's automated systems 11 seconds after Cassia Wren took her first photograph, and it had taken the system another 4 minutes to flag it as critical, route it through 2 separate review queues, and finally produce the kind of notification that Prin had spent 19 years not seeing. It read, in the flat bureaucratic language of the Accord's contact protocols, stealth compromise, pre-emergent species, recommendation, immediate assessment required. Prin stared at it. Belloc's bioluminescence shifted to a pale, uncertain orange. "They saw us?" he said. "One of them did," Prin said. She was already pulling up the probe feed, already watching the image data that Probe 7 had captured in the moment before its stealth field corrected, already seeing, with the particular clarity that 19 years of experience provided, exactly what had happened. One of them was sitting on a roof in the middle of their night cycle with a spectrographic imager. Why was she on the roof? The heating system broke. Belloc processed this. So we were discovered because of a broken heating system, and a woman who apparently eats sandwiches at 2 in the morning, Prin said. She pulled up the deeper file, the 11-month observation data, and began reading through it with new urgency. Species threat index, stability metrics, technological development curve, population distribution. She had read summaries of this file a dozen times. Now she was reading the primary data, and the primary data was considerably more interesting than the summaries had suggested. The species called themselves humans. They had, in the last 120 years alone, split the atom, walked on their own moon, developed global communication networks, mapped their own genome, built computing systems of increasing sophistication, and produced an artistic and cultural output of truly staggering volume and variety. They were, by most conventional metrics, exactly where you would expect a pre-emergent species to be, except for the violence indices which were not, as Prin had initially assumed, evidence of instability. The Accord's assessment models were built on the assumption that widespread conflict indicated socio-political fragmentation, a species tearing itself apart. But the human data told a different story. These beings had been fighting each other continuously, in various configurations and coalitions, for the entirety of their recorded history, and they were still here, not despite the conflict, in some way that the models were not quite capturing. Because of it, the conflict was not destroying them. It was, in some horrifying and counterintuitive way, a mechanism through which they tested and refined and strengthened themselves. Prin found this observation extremely uncomfortable, and chose to set it aside temporarily. What was harder to set aside was the secondary file, the one flagged by the survey team's xenobiologist, Dr. Amar Savali, buried 3 levels deep in the supporting documentation. It was titled, with scientific understatement, Anomalous Biological Indicators, Further Review Suggested. Prin opened it. She read it. She read it again. She set down her tea. Belloc, she said. Yes. Did you read the xenobiology file? I read the summary. Read the primary file. There was a pause while Belloc pulled up the document. Then his bioluminescence did something Prin had never seen it do before. It went completely white, not pale, not uncertain. White, the color of a Suri who has just experienced something that does not fit into any existing category of experience. That cannot be right, he said. Dr. Savali thought it was right enough to flag. But the regenerative capacity indices alone, I know, and the pain tolerance metrics, those were measured how? The humans measured them, themselves. They have entire scientific fields dedicated to studying their own biological limits. Prin paused. They do it voluntarily, for research. Belloc was quiet for a long moment. And the variance data, the part about individual variation. Yes, they are all the same species, according to every genetic marker we have. Prin leaned back in her seat, looking at the star on the display. Small, unremarkable, 3rd planet out, standard observation protocol, 40 to 70 years pending socio-political stability resolution. They are absolutely all the same species. Then why, Belloc said carefully, does this one individual's biological data look like what the Accord would classify as a warrior caste specialist in a species that has warrior castes? Prin said. I don't know. And this one is an atmospheric researcher. She studies air particles for a living. She eats sandwiches on rooftops. She pulled up Cassia Wren's full profile, compiled from 11 months of observation data, and now supplemented by the spectrographic images the woman had taken, not 40 minutes ago. Unremarkable. Mid-level. 2 published papers. The biological readouts attached to her profile told a story that did not match the biography at all. Prin made a decision. And it was the kind of decision that 19 years of careful, methodical work had theoretically prepared her to make, and which she now made with the distinct sensation of stepping off a ledge in the dark. She opened a channel to the ship's communications array. This is 7th Contact Assessor Prin Ovaleth, she said, aboard the Unbroken Inference, survey designation 7C Orion Spur 3. I am filing an emergency escalation under Contact Protocol 17. Pre-emergent species designation pending, has achieved confirmed visual detection of survey assets. She paused. I am also requesting an emergency xenobiology consultation and a complete review of preliminary threat classification. Another pause. A shorter one. Classification has likely been filed incorrectly. Recommend immediate upgrade review. She closed the channel. Belloc was still white. What classification? He asked. Do you think it should be? Prin looked at the data. At the violence indices and the regenerative readings, and the pain tolerance metrics, and the 11 photographs taken by a woman on a roof because the heating was broken. She looked at 41 first contacts, and 19 years of never being surprised. I have absolutely no idea, she said. And that, Belloc, is the first time I have ever said those words in a professional context. She picked up her tea. She put it back down. Get some sleep, she told him. I have a feeling we are going to need it. 2 light minutes away, Cassia Wren was still sitting in her research station, looking at 11 photographs on her screen, while Dr. Okafor had flown 3 hours in a transport vehicle that should not have been flying in polar conditions to stand next to her and look at the same photographs. They had not called anyone yet. They were still working out who you called. It corrected, Cassia said. She had been saying it at intervals for the last hour. It saw me looking at it and it corrected. Yes, Okafor said. So it knows we know. Yes. So what happens now? Okafor looked at the photographs. He looked at the sky. He was a man who had spent 30 years studying atmospheric methane stratification, and he was, in this moment, approximately as prepared for this as anyone else, which was to say not even slightly. "I think," he said, slowly, "that we wait." He was right, though neither of them would have predicted exactly what they were waiting for. The waiting lasted 9 days. 9 days of Cassia and Okafor telling absolutely nobody, which was simultaneously the most responsible and most psychologically damaging decision either of them had ever made. They ate terrible sandwiches together. They drank coffee that had no business being called coffee. They checked the sky with the spectrograph every 2 hours, which Cassia logged as routine atmospheric monitoring in the station's official record, which was technically true in the sense that she was monitoring the atmosphere for the presence of invisible alien spacecraft, and the atmosphere is in fact a real thing. On the 4th day, Okafor had a minor breakdown in the equipment room and then emerged looking entirely composed and never mentioned it again. On the 6th day, Cassia started a new document on her personal terminal titled "Things to Consider If We Are Being Watched by an Extraterrestrial Intelligence," and the first item on the list was "Buy Better Sandwiches," which tells you everything you need to know about where her head was. On the 9th day, the signal came. It did not come through a radio telescope. It did not come through any piece of equipment that Cassia or Okafor owned or had access to. It came through the station's standard communications terminal, the one used for internal mail and supply requisitions, and the occasional passive-aggressive memo from the logistics department about the improper use of the emergency heating budget. It arrived as a standard text packet, formatted in 12 of Earth's most widely used languages simultaneously, which should have been technically impossible, given that no external party had been granted access to the station's internal communication system. The message was the same in all 12 languages. Clean, short, deliberate. "We apologize for the delay. We were discussing how to do this properly. We have not done it this way before. We would like to speak with the person on the roof." Cassia read it 4 times. Then she typed back, in English, because she was not about to attempt diplomatic first contact in her second language. "This is Cassia Wren. I am the person on the roof. I would like to speak with you also. Please advise on preferred communication method." Okafor, reading over her shoulder, said, "You sound like you're responding to a work email." "I don't know how else to sound," Cassia said. The reply came in 11 seconds. "This method is fine. We have been studying your languages. Your written English is clear. We are going to activate a visual display on your primary monitor in 3 seconds. Please do not be alarmed." Cassia and Okafor looked at each other. "Do not be alarmed," Okafor repeated. "They're trying to be polite," Cassia said. The monitor activated. Prin Ovaleth had spent 4 days arguing with the Accord's contact division about the correct procedure for what she was now doing, and the conclusion they had reached, after 4 days, was that there was no correct procedure, because nothing quite like this had happened before. The standard first contact protocols assumed that you would be meeting a species' official representatives, their government, their military, their religious leadership, someone whose job it was to speak for the whole. Nobody had written a protocol for making first contact with an atmospheric researcher who found you by accident while eating a sandwich. The Accord's senior contact director, an ancient Keth named Vorath Sel, had ultimately said, with the exhausted pragmatism of someone who had been doing bureaucratic diplomacy for 200 years, "She found them. Let her talk to them. File everything." So Prin was on screen. She had spent considerable time deciding what to show, visually. The Accord's Xeno-communication team had provided 17 different recommended visual presentation formats, ranging from abstract geometric patterns to full biological representation. Prin had looked at all 17 options, then looked at the observation data on humans, and chosen full biological representation on the grounds that a species who voluntarily measured their own pain tolerance for research was probably not going to be frightened by the sight of a tall, gray-skinned, 3-fingered alien on a screen. She was right. Cassia looked at her for approximately 4 seconds. Then she said, "Hi." Prin, who had prepared a formal 6-paragraph opening statement, looked at Belloc. Belloc's bioluminescence had gone a cautious yellow-green. She looked back at the screen. "Hello," she said. "I'm Cassia, the roof person. I know. I am Prin Ovaleth. I am a contact assessor with an organization called the Galactic Accord. We are the closest thing to a governing body that the inhabited galaxy has. I apologize for the stealth equipment. Standard procedure requires that we observe before making contact. She paused. The procedure did not account for spectrographic imagers. How long were you watching us? Cassia asked. There was no anger in the question. Genuine curiosity, and a quality underneath it that Prin's long experience with first contacts had taught her to recognize as carefully maintained calm. The kind you develop when panic is not a product. 11 months, Prin said. Cassia nodded slowly. And what did you decide? Prin considered the question, and the many complicated answers it deserved, and the xenobiology file still open on her secondary display, and the fact that the Accord's Emergency Review Board had spent 3 days arguing about threat reclassification with no resolution. We decided, she said carefully, that we needed to speak with you directly. Okafor leaned into frame. I'm Ferris Okafor. I study methane stratification. I have no official standing here whatsoever. I just happen to be visiting. Hello, Dr. Okafor, Prin said. Is there more than one of you up there? Okafor asked. Or, there are 11 crew aboard this vessel, Prin said. We are a survey ship. The nearest Accord diplomatic vessel is approximately 8 of your days away, traveling at maximum drive capacity. They are already on their way, she said the last part specifically, so that both humans understood the decision had been made, at levels considerably above her pay grade, that this contact was going to proceed. What she did not say was that the diplomatic vessel was also carrying 3 xenobiologists, 2 conflict assessment specialists, and a Keth admiral who had cleared his entire schedule for the next 6 months and had personally called Vorath Cell to ask for a full briefing because the preliminary data had gone up the Accord's chain of communication like a signal flare, and every single person who had read it had the same 2 questions. The questions were, is this accurate? And if it is accurate, what does it mean? Cassia asked the question that Prin had been half expecting since the screen activated. How many other species are out there? 714 registered with the Accord, Prin said. 40-some in evaluation. And then there is you. She paused. You are, to use the Accord's technical terminology, a significant anomaly. A what now? Okafor said. Your species presents biological and behavioral data that does not conform to standard pre-emergent developmental models, Prin said. She had decided, after 9 days of debate with herself and 4 with the Accord, that clarity was the correct approach. Humans, the observation data consistently suggested, responded poorly to ambiguity and extremely well to direct information, even uncomfortable information. You are considerably more durable than your developmental stage would predict. Your pain response is unusual. Your conflict history is unlike anything in our records for a species that has not yet developed interstellar travel, and your individual variation is, are what? Cassia said. The difference between the strongest and weakest members of your species, Prin said. In most species, individual variation at your developmental stage falls within a predictable range. Your range is not predictable. You have individuals whose biological capabilities would qualify them for warrior caste designation in species that have warrior castes. She let that land for a moment. You are, apparently, all the same species. Cassia and Okafor looked at each other. Yes, Cassia said slowly. We are. The Accord's xenobiologists find this. Prin searched for the right word, notable. What Prin did not say, because the diplomatic vessel had specifically requested she not say it yet, was that notable was doing an extraordinary amount of work in that sentence. What the Accord's xenobiologists actually found it was the single most significant biological dataset in 3,000 years of contact history. What the Accord's conflict assessment specialists found it was the reason 3 of them had not slept properly since receiving the preliminary brief. What Vorath Cell, 200 years old and comprehensively unshockable, had said when he read the full file was a phrase in Old Keth that translated roughly as, well, that is a problem we did not expect to have today. Because the galaxy, for all its magnificent, crowded, badly organized apartment block reality, was not a peaceful place. 714 species did not coexist in harmonious diplomatic fellowship. There were tensions, conflicts, 3 ongoing territorial disputes of sufficient severity that the Accord maintained active peacekeeping presences. There were species with standing armies and species with ancient grievances, and species who looked at every new contact as a potential threat or a potential resource. Every one of those species had just received the same preliminary brief that had kept the conflict assessment specialists awake for 3 days. And every single one of them was now doing the same math. Cassia, who studied air particles for a living and ate sandwiches on rooftops and had 2 published papers and 1 ongoing academic dispute, sat in her station at the bottom of the world and looked at the alien on her screen and said, "You're not just here to say hello, are you?" Prin looked at her for a long moment. "No," she said. "We are also here because the galaxy now knows you exist, and the galaxy is going to have opinions about that. We wanted to get here first." "First," Okafor said. "Before what?" "Before the opinions arrive," Prin said. The silence that followed was the particular quality of silence that occurs when a statement lands with its full weight, and nobody in the room is willing to be the first to acknowledge how heavy it is. Cassia broke it. "How long do we have?" "The diplomatic vessel arrives in 8 days," Prin said. "The first unofficial inquiries from other Accord members began approximately 36 hours ago. I expect formal communications within 2 weeks." She paused. "I am going to be honest with you, because the observation data suggests you prefer honesty to comfort, and because I think you deserve it. Several of those communications are going to come from species who are not pleased about what the preliminary biological survey suggests about your kind." "And what does it suggest?" Cassia said. Prin had been deciding how to say this since the xenobiology file landed on her desk 9 days ago. She had drafted it formally, informally, with diplomatic softening, without, in the end, she said it the way it was true, which was plainly, "It suggests," Prin said, "that humanity is by most metrics extraordinarily difficult to kill, that you have been fighting each other for your entire recorded history and have not managed it, that you heal faster than you should, that you endure more than you should, that your individuals vary so widely that your species, as a collective, covers nearly every biological capability category the Accord uses to classify specialized warrior species." She paused. "And that you have done all of this spontaneously, without being engineered for it, on a single unremarkable planet around an unremarkable star, in what is, cosmically speaking, a very short amount of time." Another silence. Okafor said, very quietly. "Oh?" Cassia said nothing for a long moment. She looked at the screen, at Prin's gray face, and 3-fingered hands, and the careful, measured way she was holding herself, and she did the thing that 11 months of observation data had consistently demonstrated humans did when presented with large, destabilizing information, which was to immediately start processing it practically. "What do you need from us?" Cassia said. Prin felt something she had not felt in 19 years, across 41 first contacts, in a career built on thorough preparation and methodical procedure. She felt genuinely, completely uncertain, not about what humanity was. The data was clear enough about that. Uncertain about what came next, uncertain about the shape of the years ahead, uncertain in a way that felt less like professional disorientation and more like standing at the edge of something enormous and being unable to see the bottom. "Right now," she said, "I need you to contact your governments. All of them. I need you to tell them what is happening, because the diplomatic vessel is going to arrive in 8 days, and it is going to need to speak to people who have the authority to speak for your world." She paused. "I am aware that your species has a complicated relationship with the concept of unified representation." "That's one way to put it," Okafor said. "We will adapt," Prin said. "We have protocols for complex political structures." She looked at Cassia directly. "But I want to say something before we begin that process. Before the diplomats arrive and the formal procedures begin, and everything becomes official and documented and part of the historical record." Cassia waited. "I have done this job for 19 years, Prin said. "I have made first contact 41 times. I have never once not known what I was looking at." She paused. "I do not know what I am looking at right now, and I mean that as the highest compliment my professional vocabulary contains." Cassia Wren, atmospheric researcher, terrible sandwich enthusiast, the woman who had found the universe by sitting on a roof because the heating broke, looked at the first alien face humanity had ever seen in real-time conversation, and said, simply, "We'll figure it out together." Prin thought about 41 first contacts and 19 years of certainty, and a xenobiology file that had not let her sleep properly in 9 days. She thought about 714 species about to collectively discover that the unremarkable planet in the Orion Spur had been, quietly, all along, building something the galaxy did not have a category for. She thought about the Keth admiral clearing his schedule, and the conflict assessment specialists who were not sleeping, and old Vorath Sel using words in Old Keth that did not translate cleanly into anything diplomatic. Yes, she said. And she almost believed it would be that simple.